Alright guys, so today we're looking at a board game that just came out. It is called Oceans. It's coming to retail stores soon. This is the Kickstarter version, so a lot of the Kickstarter backers have gotten it. This is supposed to come out really shortly for all retailers, so you guys will be able to get your hands on this soon. I wanted to do a review on this one because this is a game that comes from the stem. If you guys have heard of Evolution, which is kind of like when you're evolving your dinosaurs and stuff like that, that is the game that started this whole line, and a game that I also own as well. So I was really excited to dive into Oceans and see what changed, what the differences are, and you know, who I think this game is for. If you like Evolution, if you should have both copies, things like that. So let's start off with an overview of how the game actually plays, and then we'll dive into my final thoughts. Let's go ahead and do that now. Alright guys, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of what this game is like. Not an exact rule explanation of every single rule in the game, but just an overview so you guys get a feel of what this game is actually like. So this is Ocean. So we start off, this is the coral reef here on the left, and this is the ocean board. And basically, this is the deluxe version of the game. So this is a deluxe version that was sold on Kickstarter. There are a couple of exclusive cards that come with it. These fishes are the translucent fish that are coming in. This are also something you got on Kickstarter, but they will be selling those on their website. The only thing that was actually Kickstarter exclusive, from what I understand, is the exclusive card pack that actually came with like a set of certain cards that we're gonna look at later. But these translucent fish are also something you can get, but if you didn't get those, the fish are still awesome to look at. You can see here, this is what they would look like, and they all come in different colors. This is what they would look like if you just got the regular edition of the game without the translucent fish. So they're still really nice, and they're double-sided, so they're like that on each side. And another Kickstarter thing that I really like is these bags here, and this is where you store your points for every round. If you didn't have that, you would actually be using... You would actually be using these over here, and this is just a shield that you would actually use, and the shield just kind of like goes in front of you like this, and you kind of fold it, and it just kind of stands there. I haven't been using these, obviously, because the bags are obviously much better for obvious reasons, but they are there if you need them. The game also comes with 2, I wish it came with 4 at least, overview. And it comes with the overview here in the front, and then if you open up the book, overview of the 12 basic cards in the game, which we'll talk about, the surface cards here. So it's good that it comes with 2. I wish it came with 4. The game is playable for up to 4 people. There is an expansion that goes from 5 to 6 that you can get that also came with the Kickstarter edition, but will be sold separately on their website as well. So just know that when you buy the core game, it is just up to 4 players, and we'll get into more of those thoughts at the end of this wrap up of what I think about 4 and 6 players. So the way that this game will work, if you guys haven't played the other Evolution game, which is the dinosaur version, which is what the first game was, and this is kind of like the next stepping stone of that. Basically what you do is, these are the surface cards, and the basic version of the game says you should only use surface cards and just play with these, and it comes with a different set of 12 different cards. So there's a giant deck of these, and there's 12 different cards in that entire deck that are mixed around. And that's what you should be playing with for your first game or 2 to get used to it, which is what I did. And then when you're ready, you can actually grab the deep deck. And the deep deck is interesting because there's a giant pile of these, much more than these. There's 88 cards of these. And each one of these is completely different from one another. So as you can see here, they're all different. None of them are the same. So if we put that away here, so that's something you can play with, and I'll show you guys how that works and how simply it's added, but it does, obviously every card is different, each card has a different ability, which is what makes it hard when you first play the game, which is why they recommend you do, you know, little by little. So this is the ocean, as I talked about. This is the coral reef, and this is the ocean. So I'm going to put this here in front of you guys so you guys can see it. So everyone gets a hand of 6 surface cards. These are called surface cards. The blue ones are called the deep. Everyone gets a hand of 6. As you can see in turn order here, before the Cambridge Explosion, you play 1 surface card on your turn. The Cambridge Explosion is basically, there's a card underneath here that as soon as this pile of ocean fish are gone, this card comes into effect, and it's basically kicking off the second half of the game. And that is when you can actually play the deep cards, and that is when you can start playing 2 cards per turn and score 2 points per round, as opposed to the first half of the game before this ocean pile is full. So first thing you do on your turn, like it says here, is you play 1 surface card or 2 surface cards, depending on if this card is already in play, if all the fish in this little section here are gone. And then you have 2 options. You can either evolve or you can migrate. So basically when you evolve, what that means is if you have a hand of cards, let's say I had these hand of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I had these cards in my hand, obviously on my first turn, I don't have any species in front of me. So what I could do is, this is the species board here. You just take a species board, you place it down in front of you, and you play any one of these cards that you want. And let's say I decide to play Filter Feeder. Never overpopulates. So you put this card here, and basically that is what my first turn was. I played one card and I started up a new species. Each species can only have a max of 3 cards, so if I played a card the next turn, there can only be 3 here, unless a card obviously states otherwise. And you can obviously have an infinite amount of species boards, so you can keep creating more and more if you want to. So that would be the thing I did on my first turn. What you can do instead of evolving, which evolving means playing a card onto a species board, you're evolving your species. What you can do instead is you can play the card for its value underneath. So if you can see here, there are bottom numbers here, 7 and an 8. I can just play this card to the discard, and that just means I take 8 or however many the number of cards says fish from this ocean side into the coral reef, because when you try to feed, everything is going to come from the actual coral reef. So if there's nothing in here, you're not going to be able to feed your species, so you're going to have to eventually dive into the ocean and collect more fish and bring them to the coral reef. So that's how you would do it. You would play one of those cards and not use its actual printed ability, but use just that number, then you would discard it and get rid of it. So that's basically the first 2 parts of your turn, and then after that it says the feeding phase. So you would choose one of the following: either you forage or attack. So you can see here there's a green symbol and a red symbol. Green means you're going to the coral reef. It's symbolizing here green. So this would mean that you add up the total. So if I only have 1 right now, but if I had 2, let's see if I can get another one here to show you guys real quick. Let me grab one of the other cards that will show me another green symbol. So let's say this was my hand after 2 turns of playing. I had 2 cards played, and this is basically how it looked like for my 1 species. So that means that you add up your total. So if I was going to forage, which is the green symbol, which is, you remember by looking at this, that means I have 7. So that means I grab 7 fish from the coral reef, and I would place them on my sea species board, just like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and do them just like that. And that's my 7 that I collected. And that would be how I fed my species board. Now, you have to be careful, because if you overpopulate, which you can kind of see here towards the end here, let me move this up a little bit. If you overpopulate and you add a 10 fish here, you will overpopulate. And if you overpopulate, that basically means that you lose half the fish that are on the board, and they go back into whatever ocean pile you want them to, but you lose half your fish because you're overpopulating the ocean. So you need to keep mind of how much you're actually feeding and how much you don't want to overpopulate. But in this case, this card tells me I don't overpopulate, so that means that that wouldn't apply to this specific species board, because I played a card that never lets me overpopulate. But that's one of the core things about this game, is overpopulating and managing your fish, but you also need to feed them. So that's the one you could do. The attack one is the red symbols. So if this card wasn't here and this card was here, I can obviously go with 2, and that means you attack either the player to your left or your right, adjacent around the table. So if there's another species board over here, another one over here, that would be adjacent to my left or right. I choose to attack them. I use the power of my red, so I would attack them for 2, and I would take 2 fish away from them. However, if they have a symbol just like this one, which is a defending symbol, that decreases the amount of fish that I would actually take from them. So in this case, 2 is what I would take from them. If they had this symbol on their card, I would actually not be able to use the red symbol, because I wouldn't be able to take any fish, and you obviously have to feed, so you wouldn't take the red, you would take the green action instead, to take from the coral reef instead of your opponent to the side of you, because you wouldn't be able to do it. So that's kind of a gist of how the feeding phase works. And then after you feed all the species, that you feed 1 species only per turn, and that's something to keep in mind. Even if I had 5 species boards on here, you can only choose to feed 1 per turn, and that's what you need to balance, and not have 15 different species boards, because you're not going to be able to obviously balance them all. So after you do that and you go to the aging phase, the aging phase is really simple. You basically, for all your species board, if you're in the first part of the phase, you take 1 from each one, and you put it into your scoring bag that I was talking about before. So it goes into the scoring bag right here, and you put this away, and that's how you score points. The amount of fish you have in this bag at the end of the game is how many points you have, and whoever has the most points wins. And that's what you would do, and you would take from each species board, you would take 1 fish. So that's what they call aging in the game. That's why you need to make sure all your species are fed, because if you age, when it comes to the aging phase, if I have to take off
if it comes to the aging phase and I had no fish on here and I have to age right now, this species goes extinct and I lose all these cards to the discard pile, and then this species board goes back to it. So that's something to keep in mind and how that actually works. And obviously, if you're in the second part that I was talking about where the deep cards are being played, then you actually age 2 per turn instead of 1. So you'd be taking 2 fish from each species board and scoring 2 fish per turn as opposed to just 1. And after the aging phase, you just draw. You can either draw from the deep card deck, which is the blue deck if you're actually playing with the deep cards, and then you may discard any number of surface cards that you want from your hand and total up to 6, and then the next person goes, and you keep doing that over and over again. So just to show you guys, these are the 12 species cards that are in the main deck. So these are the surface cards I was talking about. So you can see what some of them are. You can see the first one here is gain 1 after the species to the left forges or attacks, which is the red or the blue symbol I was talking about. Gain 2 after the species to the left attacks, may feed 1 additional time, never overpopulates that we saw before, may have 1 extra trait. So instead of the 3 traits on per species board I was talking about, you can actually have 4. That one has a really powerful defending mechanism with the 4 laying there. This one lets you age +1, so if you put that card on one of yours, when it comes to the aging phase, instead of just gathering 1 or 2, depending on what phase of the game you're at, you would gain an extra 1. So those are the 12 cards that you're going to see in the surface deck only, like I was talking about, which is what you should probably play with first to get familiar with the game. But once you get past that and you familiarize yourself with the game, then you can start incorporating these, and then when you draw cards, you can either you can either pick the 2 cards that are going to be face up on the table for everyone to see, and you'll have these 2 deep cards face up, and you can either choose one of those, or you can grab 3 cards, pick one of the 3, and then put these 2 on the piles that are already sitting there, which are the gene pools is what they're called, and then you keep this one. What's interesting about the deep cards, besides the fact that they're a lot more powerful than what the usual ones are, is the cost on the bottom. You can use it as either the migrate, which is what what you did with the surface cards, where you discard this card and you play this card and you gain that many fish from the ocean to move to the coral reef, or to the coral reef to the ocean, however you want to do it and what you want to migrate from. But if you actually want to play this card for its ability, for this ability right here, you actually have to use this and pay that cost from your victory points. So if I wanted to play this card right now and play it onto one of my species boards, I would have to take one of my coins from my victory point cards, victory point bag, and put it back anywhere I want, either the ocean or the coral reef, and then I would be able to play this card and play it. So that's kind of how you're paying the cost of these deep cards, because they're a lot more powerful, and obviously some of them will cost more than others. These are all 2s and 1s. There's a 4 there. So just the balancing act of how to play these deep cards, and then you play them as any other way, any way you want. So that is a basic overall gist of what the game is like. You obviously go, you continue playing, and the way the game ends is when all of these piles of fish are over. So when all of these fish from all 3 ocean slots are emptied, whether there's fish in here or not, then that means the game is over. You tally up your points in the bag, and also the fish that are still sitting on your species board. You add all that up, and that's basically who the winner of the game is. And that is a basic portrayal of how the game is like. Obviously, there's a little bit more, tiny rules that you need to learn as you play, but that gives you an overall gist of what the game is like. You basically go through all those rounds. You're playing 1 or 2 cards onto your species board, trying to give them better traits, trying to get as many fish as you can and collect them into your point bag. Go into the deep and figure out and see all these cool cards that can come out of there and stuff like that, and all the different abilities that you can do and interact with each other. There's definitely some take that nature in this game and stuff where you're playing with other people, because you will be stealing fish, attacking other players, taking fish from them and stuff like that. And that's basically the gist of the game and an overview. There's a lot more cards in the game. Like I said, you can see the pile over here. These are all the surface cards that are the 12 cards that are the same that are in this pile, and these are all the surface cards. There's a lot of those cards here that you can mess with, and a lot of things to learn. So that is a basic overall gist of how the game plays. Let's go ahead and get to the table. Let me give you guys my actual thoughts about the board game.
All right, guys. So that was an overview of Oceans from North Star Games. And as I told you guys before, I already own a copy of Evolution, the original game that these guys came out with. That was basically in the same family of games. And it was about dinosaurs, and you would eat, you would create your own dinosaurs, your own species and stuff. You'd be playing traits. Has a similar idea to this, but here's where I think the line draws. First of all, this game, everyone's taking their turns 1 at a time. Evolution over there, everyone takes their turn at the same time. So right off the bat, for me, even though this game with the expansion that I have from the Kickstarter goes up to 6 players, if I have 4 players, I'm probably going to play Oceans. If I have 5 or 6 players, I'm probably going to play Evolution because the game obviously goes quicker because everyone in Evolution is taking their turns at the same time and playing their cards at the same time. But in this one, everyone is taking their turns one at a time, so there will be some downtime. Doesn't mean you can't play this game with 5 or 6 people. It still will, but it will definitely add to the turns, and it will definitely have some downtime throughout the turns, obviously, because now you have 6 people playing. But guys, first of all, this game looks absolutely amazing. You guys saw the artwork on some of those cards. I love the deep mechanic in the game. That all the cards are different. That's the biggest separation from this one and what Evolution is like, is that the 12 cards that are in the standard deck are the exact core deck. So it's perfectly balanced when you're using just those cards, the surface cards that I talked about in the overview. When you're using just those cards, they're perfectly balanced to counteract with each other and stuff like that, which makes the game, like, you know, if you're looking for a strategy game, play that game first and you'll see how many strategies there are with just those 12 surface cards and how much fun you can have with that. But when you want to take the game up a notch and you don't care about the strategy more than you care about having fun and just seeing how the game goes, add those deep cards in there. Obviously, some cards are more powerful than others. They do cost more when that thing happens, but still, you somehow may get a card that obviously works better than others and that some of your other opponents are getting. But that is what going in and diving into the deep adventure deck actually happens. And all those cards are different. So much variety in the game because of that. And something I forgot to talk about in the overview is that there's scenarios that get added each. There's 2 scenarios that get added to each game that also change up the gameplay that take effect that are in the ocean, that go in front of the ocean board. So know that there are scenario cards that do different things depending on how you interact with those. There's just so much content in this box. With that deep deck, over 80 cards that are in there that are all different from each other. It's just a great game, guys. One that's going to happily sit on my shelf right next to Evolution. Like I said, they feed different things. You know, Evolution is still a great game. I love the dinosaur, theme and stuff like that. And it plays well with 5 or 6 people because of the nature of everyone taking their turns at the same time. This one goes a little bit slower, but the deep deck that's in this game and the fact that all the trade cards, there's only 12 copies and they're all the same, really lets you have a really strategic game if you want to, or if you want to go into the more frenetic side of things, you can go ahead and add the deep deck and really have some crazy effects happen, some crazy turns with a lot of different things happening, and the game looks outstanding. Even if you don't get the Kickstarter version and you don't get those fancy fish and the fancy bags, and you don't want to outsource them from the company's website, which you can, that's fine. The game still looks fantastic with the art on the cards and stuff like that, and the boards for the ocean and stuff like that. They did a great job with this one. I'm happily adding this one to my collection. I'm looking forward to getting a lot of plays out of this one. So that is Oceans. If you guys have any questions about any of the 2 games, whether it be the regular Evolutions or Oceans that came out afterwards, or anything I talked about in this video, as always, leave it down below. If not, thank you guys for watching. Till next time.
Tech, Gaming Techie is the gaming tech, Gaming Techie, Gaming Tech, eating brekkie is the gaming tech, going for a recce is the gaming tech, Gaming Techie is the gaming tech, Gaming Techie.